All right, welcome into Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, it is our fiction episode, and we are going to contrast a relationship in Stranger Things with a relationship in Wheel of Time and why one worked. And you said the theme is budding
Hmm.
romance. So we're talking young, first in love type romance, and those contrasts are going to be Perrin and Faile from the Wheel of Time and Jonathon and Nancy from Stranger Things.
Yeah, and this may end up being a two-parter because the idea was expanding as I've referenced this a couple of times now that we've been talking about Stranger Things is the beginning of season three and the arguments that Jonathan and Nancy get into when they're working at the paper. Um, and it kind of gave me some other comparisons and contrasts that you could make in some of the good and some of the not so good relationships in Wheel of Time, but then also the way it just all falls apart. Um, we I'm I think we both kind of griped about that last time. We brought up Wheel of Time and Jonathan and Nancy and what the heck was that at the end. Um, but where it starts is actually pretty good. And part of the genesis of this was I think I've referenced this before, the Greg Owen, I think it was him talking about Wheel of Time and asking, other people, well, what characters do you like and why? And one of his wife's favorite characters was Faile. Why? Well, because it reminded me of us when we were young, that it is a young woman and a young man. So this idea that we've talked about before of navigating life by yourself in and of itself is complicated and challenging. But now when you have to do it together, so you're not just worried about yourself and what the ramifications of your decisions and your actions are, but also what does this mean for us? I have a
Mhm.
totally another person to think about. Okay. Which is important because if that keeps going down the road, then eventually you're going to have a tiny human that you have to think about as well, which is an even bigger responsibility. And I hadn't really considered that before. And it kind of made at least some of the early, not necessarily when you get into the slog, which we've complained about ad nauseum, but at least some of the early things when Fail is being kind of annoying from a young male perspective, it kind of made me reevaluate some of that of, is she being annoying? Yeah, but it's more understandable once you know where she's coming from
Mhm.
and why she's having trouble navigating this because and this is where the comparison really comes in is I'm going to start at the end actually because where I stopped I was like, you know what, this is the perfect place to stop. I'm going to stop here. It's the argument Jonathan and Nancy are having in the car right
Mhm.
after they've gotten fired.
Mhm.
They are both making good points and they are both being stubborn. And that was very much a wow, this is on the nose of why I wanted to compare them to Perrin. He's the blue collar guy. He does not come from money. He has literally been working since before he was a teenager. Usually you're about 12 when you're apprenticed to someone. If you're going down that route of an artisan, you were apprenticed at 12 around there. So he has been working and working hard since before he hit puberty. And then he kept pushing through that until you see, again, one of my favorite scenes in The Dragon Reborn. That has led him to a point where, a master blacksmith is looking at his work and saying, that's a master's piece if I've ever seen one.
Mhm.
You're ready to open your own shop. What are you doing here? Um, and that is Jonathan's point that he is making when they're arguing is the real world is hard. And you don't want to hear this, and she does. Nancy gets pissed off. Is you grew up with a silver spoon. You know, the reason Nancy's all mad. Why haven't you been supporting me? It is this was not something worth getting fired over from Jonathan's perspective. Now, ultimately, it turns out this was a bigger story than it seemed. But from Jonathan's perspective, as he says, I don't have a dad who makes six figures. I don't even know where my dad is. I didn't grow up in a two-story house in the fancy side of town. Mortgage, car, all these. He lists all these things. These things are real and they're serious. I needed this job. You wanted this job.
Hmm.
And she had expectations of, oh well, life is just going to keep cruising along because I've been on cruise control my whole life. And now the point he makes is, were those guys a-holes? Yeah, they were a-holes and they treated you like crap, but you know what, a lot of people in the real world are a-holes and are going to treat you like crap. And he's not perfect. I One of my thoughts as I was rewatching these scenes was, a thought a lot of people made about Harvey Weinstein is, hey, where were the guys in all of this? Because
Hmm.
this was essentially an open secret in Hollywood. I mean, Family Guy was making jokes about it years before all the revelations came out. And one of the points I made, and then I heard people with actual platforms making of, where were the men? Where were the brothers, the husbands, the fathers, the boyfriends, just the friends who knew that these young women were being treated like this, to go in there and say, I don't care how powerful you are. I don't care that you can ruin my career. You've ruined my career. You're still going to have a broken effing jaw.
Hmm.
You don't
I
treat my woman this way.
I don't know if that's an apt comparison if you're going to come down on Jonathan, to be fair here, because there's a big difference between what Harvey Weinstein was doing and these people giving her
Yes.
the intern treatment. Because she walks in on him when he's doing his pictures and ruins his pictures, by the
Yeah.
way, for anybody that knows anything about photography. And
Mm-hmm.
and he says, "Hey, we're all taking a beating here." It actually had it written into the script that she's not the only one. And we just got to only see what she got. But of course, they're
Mm-hmm.
making their point of misogyny and all of the patriarchy or whatever. But it was, I don't think that's an apt comparison because you can't expect him to go in there and be like, you should uphold her honor, okay? Because it was intern treatment. They were
Because
complaining
of the
about their
point, yeah,
meal, and yeah, it's
the point he makes in the car is, you want this job, I need this job.
mhm,
You know, there were some moments there though where it goes over just a whole, good old boy, hazing to, you know, you've crossed a line, but it's hard to say no, you should have done something when, okay, you've crossed a line, hurting her feelings. That,
mhm.
yeah, it is an apples and oranges because this was physical harm that was being done. Um,
But back to the point, you're absolutely correct because the problem wasn't that she did what she did, it's that she insisted on dragging him into it.
mhm.
And I mean, she snapped her fingers, and if you want to come down on Jonathan, he followed.
There,
He
there was a
protested along the
moment.
way, but he
There was
followed.
there was a really good moment. The It's the second time they go back to the old lady's house when she says, "Oh well, we need some proof." And the only thing I didn't like, and I chalk this up to crappy modern writers making Nancy too much of the good guy rather than making them both having good points. That's why I really like the scene in the car, is because they're both making good points. They're both making valid points from their perspective. I would have liked a little bit of a, oh, you mean like I told you when we were there the first time? Because he's making the point about, there's something really messed up about this rat beyond just its rabbit or whatever. Something's really weird here. And she blows him off. And maybe if you hadn't blown him off, then you would have taken it with you and had the proof in the first place,
Hmm.
right? Well, when she talks him into going back to get the rat so that they'll have the proof, there's this nice subtle job of acting by the, I forget his name, the guy who plays Jonathan, where he says you're relentless, and then he has this half smile where it's, and there's this implied, and that's what I love about you. is, yeah, you can be annoying. That this part about you, this relentlessness, the fact that you are so driven, yeah, it can be annoying, but it's also one of the things I really love about you. So you can see why he goes along with it. And but the point he's making in the car, the point after they get fired is you didn't think these things through. You didn't contemplate the consequences. You were acting like a child who's never touched a hot stove.
Hmm.
And he was trying to warn her this could go terribly wrong and this could be the end result.
Hmm.
And now he's basically saying, I told you so, and you wouldn't listen. And she wouldn't. But
And in
this is
any normal circumstances, again, he would have been absolutely 100% correct
mhm,
in this argument. The thing is, there was baked into it was the fictional writing. So, and the fantastical situation where she ended up being right in air quotes, even though he was actually more right when he was warning her about the
mhm.
freaking rat. But and then to me, I think that whole car scene was to let you think that he got the upper hand just for that scene at the end where she's like, and never doubt me again.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I stopped where I stopped is
Hmm.
because yeah, they kind of ruin it. And rewatching season three, you can see how things get ruined in season five, why things are such a mess. Um, but that the moment there where it's, oh wow, that sure looked like a breakup, but it makes sense because they're both realizing again the comparison between Perrin and Faile and this realization that we come from very different worlds, except for them it is immediately, so how do we navigate this? How do we live together? How do we merge our lives when, the scene ends with Nancy basically saying, I guess we really don't know each other. You're right, you don't. You've kind of had a glimpse into each other's worlds,
Hmm.
but you don't know what it's like. She makes the point,
Well,
you
this
don't know
is
what it's like. And he responds to her, and neither do you. And they're both right.
and this is actually well done on accident or well done on purpose. And we'll go to David Buss's work over my shoulder, the cross-ex mind reading. What he did to piss her off the most is actually one thing you can actually do to, if you're a guy, to tick off a woman the most. He challenged her empathy.
Mm,
Because if she doesn't understand what he's going through, that's challenging her empathy, her ability to feel somebody else's feelings, her ability to understand someone else's circumstance. He challenged that, and he was right.
hmm.
And that is one of the number one ways to really derail an argument with a feminine person. We'll say feminine. We'll use feminine and masculine. A feminine person because they basically we're the empathetic ones. We're the motherly types. We're the nurturers. And if you insult that even indirectly, well, now you've started a fight from an argument.
Which is interesting in the
Well,
um
I'll go on the flip side too, because she also insulted his masculinity by saying you didn't want to stick up for me. Again, a good way to create a fight from an argument in the reverse.
yeah, that's they're both they're not having an argument, they're picking a fight. They're both trying to win um rather than, hey, uh maybe I could have supported you more, but maybe if you had listened to me and actually talked it out with me rather than just bullying and bulldozing over all of my, you know, points of complaint, all the points I'm bringing up, she never engages with him. There's never a back and forth. And that's where Nancy starts to become a toxic character because you you can be wrong and that's fine. It's it's why we complain about Egwene so much is Egwene and Elaine later, Elaine less, or first half Egwene, or first half Elaine, but later Elaine for sure. She makes bad decisions, never learns from them, never suffers the consequences, never learns from the ramifications of those, and goes, "Ooh, shoot." You know, I think the last time we see Elaine have that moment is when Matt saves her from the golem,
Hmm.
and that would have been, geez, that's the end of Crown of Swords.
Hmm.
And then we never really see it again. That's kind of the last moment that happens.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pull Perrin and Faile into this as we teased from the beginning, because one of the things that annoys you as a young man, and actually it was still annoying as even as we appreciate her more going in our last reread, is young Faile, young in the relationship Faile, did exactly what Nancy did there, which was emasculate Perrin. Just as Nancy I say purposefully, it's become just basically socially acceptable to emasculate the guy you're with
Hmm.
in front of others. And Fael did that in the beginning, in front of Gaul, in front of Bane and Shaid, in front of the people in the tower, or not the tower, the stone. She did that a lot in the beginning, in front of Moiraine and Lan. She would basically browbeat him and emasculate him in public. And the shift when they got to the two rivers, notice she became a different person as soon as they walked out of that waygate, because she was setting herself up to be his wife. And she started actually negotiating with the women's circle on his behalf and defending him to them.
Well, we're not allowed to point this out, but also she pushes him too far, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens?
Yeah, true.
And 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 he loses his temper, which he hates doing, and it makes him feel bad. It makes him feel like he's done wrong, and yeah, he went too far, but he went too far because she went too far,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a learning moment for both of them. Whereas you can, this is where that argument in the car falls apart, is because of what happens afterwards. Is, that's why why I wanted to stop there, because I didn't want to go down the, oh man, why'd you have to ruin it? But you can compare that argument in the car where they're essentially breaking up because they're having this realization of, oh, we don't really know each other, do we? And rather than saying, so we really need to figure that out. What do we need to do so that we connect better, so that we know each other, so that this doesn't happen again? And that's what Perrin and Faile both do without realizing it, I think. And yeah, there are speed bumps and trouble along the way. It's not perfect. They still clash, but ultimately, after they both go too far, they realize we went too far,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to do that again. I don't. Now she still does, but she's slowly, Fail is working her way towards guiding him rather than trying to lead him. When she's criticizing the way he's leading, sometimes she's she's browbeating him. Sometimes, as you say, she's emasculating him. But more and more, she's trying to guide him. And she figures that out better later, after they get married, rather than in The Shadow Rising, where it's still kind of rocky,
Mm-hmm.
where she's still trying to figure out, how do I how do I communicate to him? How do I help him with my knowledge while still letting him be him? And he has to learn, I need her even before he knows what her background is. He recognizes good advice when he hears it. He recognizes that she has something to say, uh, about all this stuff, and he knows he can trust her. Versus when someone like Varen or Alana is trying to guide him, he's just immediately suspicious of, you're trying to lead me where you want me to go, not guide me to where I need to go.
Yeah, well, and you keep reusing the word guide, and I think that's important here because I think one of the reasons why the modern love story didn't work as well is because in The Wheel of Time, Perrin is the one going face first into the situation. I'm going to go
Hmm.
give myself up and let them kill me, and it will all be good. And she's trying to nudge the ship over and trying to turn the wheel and try to re-correct the course before it's too late, where the roles were reversed. And when the roles are reversed, but the treatment is the same, it just it just hits different. It just hits like a well, it's kind of unrealistic, and it's also it just hits like okay, I'm the badass, but also I am the right one, and also your advice is irrelevant because I'm right, and I'm always right.
Yeah.
What
Um,
what what did we hear from the significant others that one time? The that I argue because I'm right. I argue to win because I'm right, or something.
mhm. Let's pause for a second because you just walked me into this thing I was thinking about. Should I play this? And yeah, pause for a second while you get that queued up, and then we're gonna play a clip from it. Just so happens that someone we've played from before, the second story, Hillary Lang is her name, and her latest video is titled "Strong Female Characters Are Just Toxic Men." And the opening minute 5 seconds of this is just perfect to what you were just explaining.
Okay, so now we're going to play this clip that Heath wanted me to play from again. This is second story, uh, and the title is "Strong Female Characters Are Just Toxic Men" for those just listening.
Stop me if you've heard this one before. The scene opens on a shop or a market. The female character comes in and starts to examine the wares intended in terms of size for men. This could be swords, guns, bows, some kind of weapon. And the male shopkeeper comes over and says, "Ah, a lady, it just so happens that we have these lighter swords, these smaller guns, these differently made bows. These are all intended and made specifically for women who tend to have smaller hands, weaker grip strength, and so on. Would you like to try one?" Then the woman laughs and girl boss and says something along the lines of, "Us lady folk can handle blah 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 big man size the same as any of you boys. Stop being so misogynistic." This is so incredibly idiotic. This is the exact same as some woman walking into a shoe store and the guy comes out and says, "Ah, you have smaller feet, so let me show you these shoes over here that are made in your size." But the woman stops him cold. "No," she says, "I am a strong female character. I will wear size 12 man shoes like strong man folk because I am no different from man." It's just incredibly dumb and it needs to stop. But these days, you can't make it through a single shelf in a bookstore without coming across something.
Unless she looks
Yeah,
like Brianna of Tarth.
yeah. All right, so that was it. Um, because I love the analogy there, and then she goes on to explain, you know, as the title is, these aren't women; these are just, you know, bad men in as she makes the point of like in some of these video games or shows or whatever, if you don't notice the boobs, you would have no idea that that's a woman.
Hmm.
Um, Also, I had to resist the urge to go down a rabbit hole when she made the shoe store analogy because I was like, what would Al Bundy say about this? Um,
Well, the people they always showed him in the shoe store with would need the size 12s.
exactly.
That was the fight he had. He was trying to give him the size 12s, and they were like, "No, I have a petite foot."
No, you don't, honey. Oh, there's some of the I think the best moments of that show was Al at work,
Hmm.
when he would just lose it with some of these obnoxious customers. But the the point stands, and it's also, just on its face, when you frame it like that, it's so silly. It's like this makes no sense, and you aren't appealing to anyone. The the
Though
only
there is
people
an audience for it because I hear them talk.
Yes. The
Yes,
the
there is
only
an audience
people
for it.
you are appealing to is the very small section of the population that thinks like you do. And this is borne out by the ratings.
No, I would say I would disagree with you there. I think just because I have a lot of exposure to people, uh, that that appeals. to the awfuls. And I'm not talking about the educated school awfuls. I'm talking about the I stayed at home to have children, and there's a part of me that regrets that decision, and I admire the girl boss. There is that segment of the population. It's very large and it buys things. That is the purchasing power. Those people have money.
I think um this is why there has been this explosion in female literature, because you can make that more more profitable more easily than if you're talking about the production cost of TV or movies. Especially the big budget stuff that has, you know, infamously flopped in the past 5 to 10 years, where they have tried to shove the girl boss in your face in everything, and it has lost money. It has bombed at the box office. It has fallen off the streaming charts, or whatever. But I think you are right that yes, there is a very dedicated fan base to that, but as a percentage of the population, you're not going to appeal to a lot of people with that.
But it's a percentage of the money, I'm saying.
Yes. So that, and I think that is borne out with this explosion in female written, edited, published literature that is really going all in with this idea. As opposed to, you know, or even video games, because depending on the production value, you can have a more story driven video game, and there have been some niche ones that have succeeded, but again, they're niche
Hmm. Well, I mean,
compared to like your the first Assassin's Creed or whatever.
this has no spoiler in it for the show. If you haven't watched it for season 4 on Witcher, I watched it so you don't have to. And we're gonna have to have Affable Gentleman on at some point here soon, if he can stomach it. I almost stopped it in the first 10 minutes. And I made it through the first episode and I was like, I'm not watching the second. And then I was like, gosh, dog it. I'm gonna have to talk about this one day. And you know me, I will not talk about something I didn't study. So it's whew, I could only get through one episode a night, where normally I would, until the last two, because I'm like, I'm getting through this tonight and ripping the freaking Band-Aid.
Mhm.
And the last episode, it 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 felt like an end of a normal episode that you would be watching the next one the next week. I'm like, that's not a cliffhanger. That's just no closure. There's a difference between the two. And so we'll see what happens if they get
Mhm.
another season or not, and if I care to watch that one.
Yeah.
But my point here was, in the video games, I don't know what about the books. We'll get Affable Gentleman on that. In the video game, you do get to play Ciri in Witcher 3. And she's kind of a girl. She's a girl boss. She really is. I mean, she's slated to save the world, right? And
Mhm.
the show made her a lesbian lover when she had no time for that kind of stuff in the game. But it is what it is. But when you played her, she had special powers that Geralt didn't have, that you could use. But when you were she, but you could you most combat was still sword fighting. Even if you focused on the special power stuff with the guys and the gals, most combat was still sword based, and you were at a deficit every time you were her. You could still beat all of the soldiers and stuff, but it was harder because she didn't hit as hard. She moved faster, but she didn't hit as hard. You had to be more strategic when you were fighting. Like you talk about the original Black Widow, how
Mhm.
it was more strategic fighting versus just in your face hack and slash, right? So you had to do those things when you switched to that character, because she's smaller, more diminutive, and she had a smaller sword. It did less damage. Yes, it was faster, but it did less damage. You had to maneuver better. You had to do all of these things because she couldn't just cut your head off with one swing. But in the show, oh, three guys walk up to you that are seasoned soldiers, they're dead.
Mhm.
And it's just like, oh, okay, that's cool. Next, that wasn't even climactic. At least give me a fight scene.
Yeah, that is to say nothing of the toxically masculine personality that is terrible. You brought up Black Widow. Two of the best scenes in all of the early MCU are her, that hallway fight scene, where Jon Favreau's happy is in the back trying to deal with one guy, the hallway fight scene, and her interrogation of Loki, where Loki doesn't even realize he's being interrogated. And he goes, "Oh, thank you. You just told me everything without realizing you've told me everything." Mirroring what she was doing in the opening there in Russia. And she was able to get in his head. Well, what if you had actually done that, writers of Stranger Things? Because what is Nancy's gift? She's an incredibly smart individual. This is why one of the reasons why she's so driven in her chosen profession of I want to be a journalist is she realizes before anyone else does, even if she doesn't know why, that this is more than just a rat acting weird. Something's going on here.
Hmm.
She has that intellect. Okay, well, lean into that. Why do you have to make her Nambo? Why do you have to make her Nancy Rambo? Just lean into that. That's what she brings to the group. Everyone brings something different, except for Nancy, who's just awesome.
Yeah. Well, and again, to circle us back to our original theme here with the difference between Perrin and Faile and Nambo and Jonathan is Perrin and Faile reached an understanding with each other where they came closer to each other and acknowledged the differences with each other. So she acknowledged, oh, I see where you come from now. I see the mindset of your village. I see how you think now. And hey, you know what? I need your advice because I've never ruled a kingdom before.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of came, and that's oversimplifying it, but they kind of came together on that. So back to that argument versus how that episode ended, what you could have just had was her saying, "You know what? I understand how I was reckless with your life and that you don't come from this. And I'm working towards an understanding of where you come from that." And him going, "You know what? I really shouldn't doubt your intuition so much."
Mm-hmm.
How about that conversation? I mean, that would have been fine. That would have been a reconciliation instead of just him simping in and saying, "Yep, you're always right. I'll never doubt you again."
But that would require writers who aren't afraid of the feminine and who aren't afraid to have female characters that have flaws.
That's just theory of mind, though. That's not even the
Yeah.
feminine. Just saying I understand your predicament and that I was insensitive to it.
So
That's not even feminine. That's just human
mhm.
interaction.
Two of the examples Hillary Lane gives in that video shortly after that intro or that first minute in the intro is she lists off a number and she lists two of the most obvious ones in cinema, and then she lists off some literary ones that we've talked about before of Sarah Connor in Terminator and Ripley in Alien and Aliens. And it suddenly dawned on me as she was saying it, it really, one of the reasons Ripley is so awesome and is the way she is because what drives her is that motherly instinct. And remember, that's a big deal in the second movie because she's been in cryo for so long. Her daughter is now older than she is, and and that hurts. But I hadn't really realized it before, but that's why the cat is so important in the first movie because the cat is like, when your kid goes off on their first sleepover and they take their stuffed animal so they can have that to hold because they don't have mom and dad tonight, and that's what the cat is. That is kind of her surrogate daughter because she can't be with her daughter. That's why she's so concerned about protecting the cat. And then in the next movie that expands to where she's not just clearly protecting Newt because it is a young girl, but also protecting everybody. Like she's the one who acts when they get in trouble because she's driven to protect. You contrast that with Sarah Connor, especially in T2.
Hmm.
She's so naive, literally. She doesn't know what's going on in Terminator 1. And then she has had this transformation in between movies in the 13 years or whatever, however old John is in that in T2. And now what is her flaw? It's I wouldn't have thought of this if you weren't harping on this all the time, but Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 is driven by that motherly instinct to protect, but the danger is she is becoming the Freudian overbearing mother.
Hmm.
I need to protect him, but I also have to let him live and grow up so that he can be a man and be the man he needs to be.
Oh, wouldn't that have been a plot twist? They defeat the T2 Terminator, but he grows up to be a little simp and he doesn't save the world.
That's basically what they did in the crappy sequels that they've made more recently. But the point is, that's all subtext. They don't say any of that out loud, and it makes for a richer, better story. You know, even with our complaints about Faile as a character, about the slog, there's so much subtext, so much life wisdom that was lived by the author that it still makes for a compelling story. I mean, we've been sitting here for several years rambling on about these stories because there's so much there. And every time we think we have exhausted, we go, oh, you know what? I hadn't considered before, but here's another thought. Here's another insight. This makes me think of that thing. And now with modernity, it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about Stranger Things is I can't remember who I heard say this, but Stranger Things feels like the last appointment television that we have had or maybe will ever have, and that Game of Thrones at its peak was the previous. Everybody is talking about this even if they're not
Mm.
watching it. They're going, what's this all about? Why are you people so obsessed with this? Stranger Things was that for a while, and the conclusion with season 5 had a lot of hype around it. And how much has it lasted versus people just going, wow, that was a disappointment.
Mm.
Wow, that really didn't leave me satisfied. It's all right, well, it was an ending. Was it the ending? Not really. To being just downright ticked off. Like this whole subculture of people who were convinced that there was a secret, last episode. I think we talked. Did we talk about this? About all the people that thought that the final episode wasn't real, that it was all in Vecna. Vecna was manipulating them.
No, I don't remember talking about that with you.
So this went on for a while, like for weeks. People were convinced, no, no, that wasn't real, and they were finding all these bizarre things to justify it. Of no, they're all actually trapped in the upside down or in Vecna's little hive mind cave or whatever, and he's messing with their heads. This isn't real. No, that was real. That was the ending. That's how it ended. You're sorry, guys. That's it. But people were so dissatisfied with the ending, it created this entire conspiracy theory culture of there's this secret, next episode that's going to be the real ending. No, this is all you get. So, folks, sorry. That's as good as it gets these days.
Hmm. It's like when your team loses and is eliminated from the playoffs, and and you're like, no, no, tell me that there's going to be this foul that was called, or there's going to be something that comes up, and you're like,
Yeah,
nope,
yeah.
gotta wait till next season,
The
buddy.
the clock reads 0, and you're like, was there a flag? Please, was there a
Yeah,
flag?
was
Was
there
there?
a flag?
Nope,
Yeah,
nope. That's it. Game's
yep.
over, man. Game over. Speaking of aliens, game over, man. Well, that's a nice cheery place to end it on, and we will continue to rant about it a little bit more next time because I do want to go on from that car scene and say, and here's where it all went downhill, because it occurred to me as I was rewatching these scenes this morning that I wanted to compare and contrast Perrin and Faile and Jonathon and Nancy, because at the beginning there's that similarity of a young couple who has to learn how to live with each other and develop a relationship as their own lives are developing. And then I realized, oh no, the better analogy is Egwene and Gawain, because
Yeah,
it's just sad and it doesn't end well. Where
yeah.
it could have been actually something um non-traditional and interesting because one of the points of the Aes Sedai warder relationship is the Aes Sedai, the woman is the leader. And that actually kind of works with Nancy and Jonathon because Nancy is the social butterfly, Jonathon is the wallflower, but when they're together, but he supports her. That could have been something good and a contrast to you know Hopper as kind of the
Yeah.
more masculine alpha
Well,
lead
that's where I thought they were going with it until they, I mean, either just wrote it bad or went a different direction.
or decided, nah, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I guess I'll end on a little short little monologue here because something a little fun because I thought we were going to go further to their
Mhm.
last conversation where basically I think we kind of end with her is like I'm too focused to be in a relationship is basically the thing.
Mhm.
And I've got some advice for any young men in the audience.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're single, isomorphic, or any of our other followers, Scott or Jason, and anybody else who would love to leave yourself in the comments, and we'll mention you too. Uh, if you're on a first date and you hear these words, run. Dogs are better than people.
Oh my gosh.
The old single dog mom, right? Or the cat lady. Dogs are better than people. Run. This is somebody who does not have the relationship capacity to actually put effort in. That's the difference between dealing with a dog and dealing with a person. You deal with the dog, you give them pets and food, and they are the most loyal thing and they are a constant affirmation for you. Dealing with a person is much more complicated. And anybody who says the dogs are better than people line and means it means they do not have the capacity to put any effort into actually being a good person to another person as well. So there you go. There's your red flag. And I had thought about that because we were talking about this topic, but we didn't get that far. But there's your advice. If you're in the
Yeah.
dating market, yeah, run really fast. Unless she's really pretty, then maybe go for it for that night, but then run. Uh, Sorry, mom, if you heard that. And I know you heard that because you listen to these.
That's the way guys be. All right. Well, we will see what we'll rant about next time. No, I haven't been paying attention to the news, so I don't know what's
You
going
said
on
we
out
were
there.
going to do another relationship episode. Oh no, were you talking about this one when you said that?
Yeah, we'll talk more Wheel of Time versus Stranger Things next time. Next Saturday. Explore this topic a little further and where Jonathan and Nancy end up and why it is so dissatisfying and why it didn't need to happen.
Oh, I heard something today that I haven't gotten to look into yet, and maybe that'll be a good subject. I guess Pam Bondi did something with the Epstein list, like released the whole thing, all the documents to every member of Congress on a lockdown browser on individual laptops. And then apparently they traced where these people searched first.
Hmm.
All the congressional members searched first when they had the information to see what they were looking for.
Oh dear.
That's kind of 4D chess, but I mean, if that's true, I would like to see what the fallout is from this.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I also we haven't had a fitness episode in a while,
This is true.
and I don't remember who I heard say this. We might talk about this a little bit on Wednesday. Isn't it interesting how quickly the body positivity movement disappeared once Big Pharma found they had a magic shot they could sell you?
Yeah. Oh, I was just ranting about that this morning because I was stuck in. We're later recording than we normally are, and this will probably be out Sunday, not the Saturday of Valentine's Day, which is also my birthday.
Happy
Yay!
birthday, Samo.
Yeah. But they shut down the freaking freeway because of I mean, a legit reason when I found out what it was. A gas tanker, I guess, blew up or something. But so I was stuck, and there was a sign above me, and it was Wegovy, the one of the GLP ones, and it had a like It was just the torso of a female in a bikini and the little tape measure around her waist, and it was obviously a very lean person, and it was something about, getting the best you, Wegovy. And I'm like, that's not what these things are for. We have no data in what they do to a normal person. Are we
Mhm.
going to be down the road dealing with an epidemic of osteoporosis? Because what we have seen is bone loss with these drugs. Are our nursing homes going to be flooded because people can't stand up from their chair when they're 65? Because we've seen a lot of muscle wasting from these products. Are we going to be supplementing hair products because hair's falling out with these products? You know, they reduce fat, yes, and they help with your blood sugar, yes. But there's a lot of other things that are going on there. They seem to reduce everything. And when we're as fitness professionals, when we're dealing with a client, we discourage things like over dieting and overtraining because we want to lose the fat and keep the good stuff at minimum, if not gain the good stuff.
Mhm.
And this whole magic shot, it's non-specific. You waste away. I mean, go look up Dr. Peter Attia's work on DEXA scans with this stuff. He uses it in his practice, but he monitors his clients and he uses it very sparingly with the right clients. If you are a type 2 diabetic, hey, it's made for you. Do what your doctor says, go there. If you're going to some little IV transfusion alternative medicine place and getting it from an RN because you want to lose 20 pounds, we don't know what that's going to do to you, honey.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Well,
that's a good episode.
sounds like you need to dig up the witchcraft on this and have it ready so we can explain it to people. Because you really need to know what's going on here. Because buyer beware.
Yes.
All
All
right. Well,
right.
we'll see y'all for that next time.
All right, later.